is outside, so she doesn't interfere with my video recording. My last video I made in my bedroom, which I didn't want to go, but she cannot interfere with it, that camera system. And when I was on my bed, she was on top of my books, so I couldn't access them, so I just decided to do just a clipboard thing. And I'm going to continue with this clipboard thing. Come on, behave. Okay. That tab is set up because I'm going to be doing videos with this thing concerning Prisma 3D. Right now I made the graphics, cable graphics to represent what's going on. Games. Okay, I got to change. I'm gonna have to nip that up. So I did some modifications to that. I'm not finished with the modifications to this. So yeah, the ship movement. I'm going to need to finish that up. I'm going to do that off camera. Do those projects. But also I'm going to do some ship designs using Prisma 3D, similar to the way I'm doing my spacecraft projects. I'm going to be doing hulls and stuff like that concerning ironclads and ether flyers. Okay. So, and then, come on, we're gonna go like that. Nope. Then I'm going to do notepad free text documents concerning the my warship designs and stuff. I may put some of these notes that I make onto a text document here. For Android or OS platforms, Notepad Free is an excellent text document format. I have created text documents that's like 40 pages long with Notepad Free, which if I was on a desktop, laptop, computer system, that's normal. I have some of my flowchart projects are in the 20 pages to 80 pages in length. On my non-flowchart projects, most of my text documents are within 10 pages length, but then about half of them are in the 60 to 120 page length. Actually 40 to 80 page length, and I only have like a handful that's between 80 and 120 pages in length or larger. So I love Notepad Free. Notepad Free is an excellent text document for Android OS. Microsoft Windows, WordPad, and WriteExe is, those are what I use for my text documents. And then I use the Microsoft Windows Notepad for coding, Visual Basic coding, and then other simple text documents that don't require. But my flowchart project text documents are using Windows WritePad, WriteExe, WordPad documents. I have used Publisher 97 and other post product that you go to the store, buy, and then put it on the computer. I've done others. They're not as good as what they don't service my needs as well as what the Windows WordPad and Notepad does for me. So they're more difficult to work with. So yeah. Okay. Last night I talked about naval force types. Okay, I got a mirror looking at this thing. Now, in my bedroom, I can see what's going on. I can look at the camera, see what's happening. I can adjust. Out here, I cannot do that, so I set up a mirror system so I can see what's going on. So we have basic type. Okay, so we have mission type, not naval force types, port defense, coastal defense, oceanic fleet. Then we have warship types of cutters, sloops, frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battle cruisers, battleships, aircraft carriers, and submarines. And then you have warship mission roles. Okay, and then here's that where I did the cable, and then the hull size one, and then that one cable for it's 200 yards, and so 60 feet. That's equals hull size. For that's the calculation here that I made on the first video. So, and I have a, where'd I go? I moved the table. I have a 3-ring binder. That I'm going to be putting all this stuff in. I don't need this right now, so put it on the left side on, so I'm guessing on what's going on here. I am nearsighted, so I can't see things. Everything's blurry. I was physically assaulted on 18 March 2020. I have stigmatism. I've always had stigmatism, but I had, prior to the physical assault, I could have my hand around here and have no stigmatism. But after the physical assault, there's stigmatism here. There is. I always have stigmatism now. So there's advantages and disadvantages to this stigmatism. My eyes are sensitive to light, so driving at night, glare and stuff is really bad for me. So I've been driving with sunglasses at night to diffuse that issue. Sometimes driving without my take off my taking off my glasses does help, but also I lose the accuracy, distance accuracy of upside down and 120. Okay. All right. So let's see here. So let's get into this. Oh, I forgot to bring my writing stuff. During my high school years, I took up drafting, technical drafting, and I started getting to the drafting community was shifted from wooden pencils to mechanical pencils. So we had mechanical pencils that was in 3 millimeter, 0.3 millimeter, 0.5 millimeter, 0.7 millimeter, and 0.9 millimeter. And my dad was a hydraulic engineer. He has a bachelor's degree. And he taught at Kenosha Technical Institute back in the late 1960s. And his first edition of technical drawing textbook, I got the 8th edition. I have Dad's first edition. I don't know where it's at. There you are. This is the book that I was trained on. First edition. Had my drawings, my dad's drawings in there. It's not, and the first edition was half this size. And so you have, let's see here. Yeah, like these drawings, these types of drawings that were in the book. And it says made by Jim Quern. That was my dad. In the first edition. So you were trained back in the late 60s, early 70s on the first edition. Yep, that's my dad. So yeah, that's okay. So let's see here. Ironclads, either FLYERS. I am not technically inclined like my dad was. So my dad, no, the reason I mentioned my dad was because of mechanical pencils. He has the old 1960s drafting equipment, and he started using mechanical pencils, and he swears by mechanical pencils. Can you learn the Navy? Again, as I mentioned in a previous video, Ireland is a fictional nation, and it's meant to represent my own personal theories, military warfare theories, military technology theories, design theories, tactics and strategies theories. So that's what Ireland is about. So we're going to do warship missions. Mission roles. That's better. So you have aeronaval warfare and you have outer space warfare within the Ironclads, or the Ironclads Ether Flyers. But Ironclads Ether Flyers is a tabletop miniatures wargame system within the Space 1889 RPG system. And this is an outer space system. It's a Victorian Age steampunk. Basically, that's how I would describe this game system. It's an outer space science fiction genre within the Victorian Age time frame. And the Victorian era can be classified as a steampunk genre. But steampunk is usually more modern. But you know, so you have various different. You have within the Navy. Okay, I have already just. Where's my other? Did I put all three of them in there? Nope. There we go. Everybody's in there. So what did I do with the paperwork? Okay, so regardless of the warship type, cutters, sloops, frigates, destroyers, torpedo boats. Now, within the classification of a torpedo boat was significant, and that they were basically back in the 1860s and 1880s, 1840s. You had various different waterborne explosives, and they were all called torpedoes. For example, you take a World War II veteran, a soldier, transport him back to the 1880s. Hey, Sandy. Okay, I'm going to throw you outside also. can find things without my glasses sometimes, but sometimes I need glasses to see clearly because I got fast eyes. And so you just throw a World War II vet into the 1880s, 1860s, 1880s. And he has this pineapple grenade. And he throws the grenade into the water and explodes. It's called a torpedo. The hand grenade that hit the water, we call it torpedo because it's a waterborne explosive device. You can have a raft with a keg of gunpowder. You light it up and it goes boom. It's a keg of gunpowder. A bomb. You put it on a raft and light it up and explodes. It's called a torpedo. When they came out with the self-propelled torpedoes, which is what is modern day torpedo, that terminology changed. Now they did use the term mines and stuff a little bit also to describe the type of torpedo, but they were all called torpedoes, and so it was not wrong to say, okay, the spar on the Huntley, H.L. Huntley submarine was called a torpedo because it had an explosive device at the end of the spar. And that it did not have a self-propelled torpedo system. And in fact, self-propelled torpedoes was not around at the time of the H.L. Huntley was being built. So, but within this game system, there's the paperwork. They come and go. So, yeah. So my Space 89 version of my Ironclads IRONCLADS version of the Huntley is going to have torpedo tubes and on it. So that's going to be it's a variation thereof. So you have civilian naval vessels and you have military naval vessels within the national defense system. The civilian aspects would be your hospital ships and your police ship vessels. So, and then your mercantile ships and your ocean liners, recreational stuff. Now, the the Ironclads Flyers do not deal with ocean liners. You do have merchant vessels. There is game mechanics for taking out merchant vessels within the game system, but you do not actually design merchant vessels for the game system. So, and all of these would be classified under the torpedo boats. So between 1840 or 1850, 1860 to 1880, torpedo boats were basically experimental vessels. Essentially, they were the 1800s version of modern day speedboats or modern day bass boats, armed with a torpedo tube and torpedo launcher and torpedo tubes. And the torpedo tubes and the torpedoes themselves were experimental designs. And between 1880 and 1890, the design was the concept, the torpedo boat concept was a valid vessel and was a valid weapon system. And so the torpedo boats went through an evolution. They gained in size to add guns for self-defense, to shoot back at any before the torpedo boat can get into torpedo range. And they also gained in size to gain oceanic naval capabilities. And within, so during the 1880s and 1880 AD and 1890, you had a rise of the torpedo boat destroyer, and which was smaller than the frigate, or which was comparable to a frigate, smaller than a cruiser, maybe same size or maybe larger. They're basically similar to frigates in size, but they were designed for speed. And mostly because your cutters, your sloops, and your frigates were basically at that time around 15 knots, 20 knots maybe at the highest. Had high speed somewhere between 15 knots and 20 knots. And your battleships were in that 15-20 knot range. Your cruisers were in the 20-25 knot range. And the torpedo boats were even faster than the cruisers. And so they needed to make a vessel that was faster than a cruiser and to hunt down the torpedo boats. And so you had the torpedo boat destroyers. And so between 1890 and 1900, the distinction between a torpedo boat and a torpedo boat destroyer became indistinguishable, because the torpedo boats were no longer based on, you go shoreline vessels. You start out on a beach, load up the torpedoes, run the torpedo boat out to the ship, enemy ship launch it, torpedoes come back to shore and reload and go back out again. So that is how the experimental torpedo boats were made. And once the platform was established as being valid naval vessel, then they started improving the torpedo boat platform as a weapon system platform. And so then you had more range, you had more torpedo capabilities, launching capabilities. They stayed out longer. They had more, they were more of a threat. And torpedo boat destroyers initially had no torpedoes, but the nation saw, oh, this vessel can be used as a ocean-going torpedo boat against other Navy ships out in the open ocean. And so they started carrying torpedoes also, but their primary role was to take out the coastal torpedo boats. And then the coastal torpedo boats also gained seaworthy capability. So you had their primary role was a coastal, but they go out in the oceans and patrol the oceans a little bit and then come back. And so they just dropped the torpedo boat terminology for the destroyer terminology. So that was the evolution of the destroyer. And so some nations the destroyer is larger than a frigate, and some nations the destroyer is smaller than a frigate. And a torpedo boat is a coastal coastal naval vessel. So especially within Ultimate Road Dreadnoughts video game system. Yeah, and even with the Washington Treaty of 1922, you had the torpedo boat class, which was, you could not have, was class unto itself, and it had to be a certain tonnage to be armed with torpedoes, and you couldn't have other ships armed with the torpedoes. So, with the Washington Treaty of 1922, the torpedo boat as a class was, along with cruisers and battleships. There was no battle cruiser classification within the Washington Treaty of 1922 and within the 1930 London Treaty. And by the 1930s, the coastal torpedo boat concept was gone, was no longer being utilized. So you don't see the torpedo boat classification within the 1930s treaty. And then you had other ships being armed with torpedoes after 1922, after 1930. Prior to, between 1880 and 1922, 1920s, even World War I ships had torpedoes. Like your battleships had your World War I battleship torpedoes. Like the HMS Dreadnought was armed with torpedoes. If the HMS Dreadnought was originally designed under the Washington Treaty, it would not have any torpedoes. And then within the World Warship game system and Navy field game systems, they removed the torpedo weapons from the dreadnoughts, and that made, for me, the HMS Dreadnought inferior, massively inferior. The HMS Dreadnought would definitely have advantages, would be more viable warship design with its torpedoes on there. Okay, so you got mission rules. For the civilian mission rules, you have the police. Now we're not going to go with port police, coastal police. Okay. Now the international law, maritime law, oceanic law, nations have with oceanic shorelines have a national boundary of 12 miles. So 12 miles from the coastline. Now, like Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands, there may be some separation between more than 12 miles separation, more than 24. So each island will have a 12-mile radius, and some islands may be more than 24 miles from each other. So there may or may not be open ocean between the Hawaiian Islands. I'm not sure how the Hawaiian Islands work, but but you would have, that would be part of the issue there. So you have island nations. You have like England and Japan. There's a modern day term called an economic zone. I don't know if that's part of that 12-mile radius shoreline, or if that's an extension, or what that's all about, or if it's the same thing or if it's different. But the economic zones, oceanic, is the same type of thing. Applies to that 12-mile radius type stuff. That the economic zone may have to do with protected waters. You're protecting endangered species that inhabit a certain region. This is Japanese controlled territory region to protect a certain species. That may be what an economic zone is. I'm not sure. So there is, so when it comes to beyond the shorelines, the coastal regions is a 12-mile from the shoreline. Their nations do not have authority over the waters outside of the 12-mile radius range. But possessions, naval vessel possessions and stuff is, you know, you got a ship this is a Japanese ship, this is, you know, and middle of the ocean, outside of the, you know, it has its sovereign legal status. So, which applies to shipwrecks and stuff like that on the ocean floor. So there, as far as oceanic police is concerned, that's a new thing. I would think that would fall under the military. Oceanic. But there's not much you can do other than policing the naval vessels themselves. You cannot say this is Japanese waters, this is Japanese territory. You do not. There are maritime laws that, you know, Japanese national laws, American national laws, Mexican national laws, Iranian national laws do not apply beyond the 12-mile shoreline, oceanic shorelines. So, but those laws would apply to an Iranian ship. If you're on an Iranian ship, you would apply to Iranian laws within a maritime law frame structure. There may be exceptions to the maritime law regulations on that. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. That's beyond my expertise and understanding. So, therefore, so you have police, you have search and rescue, which is a role of the police. But search and rescue can also be a military role. So you have police and military. So you're going to have civilian naval vessels that serve as a police search and rescue, and you're going to have military naval vessels that serve as search and rescue. And police is a civilian service, so they have two different jurisdictions. They have different laws of rules of engagement, combat engagement. Okay. Then you have mercantile, These would be transports, cargo transports. Passenger transports. Fishing boats. Ocean liners. And so now, ocean liner, would ocean liners be classified as a passenger transport? There may be, they are separate because ocean liners are a commercial venture for, Caribbean cruise, there's so many others that I can't think of right now. Asked me a couple years ago, I can name 5 of them. My brain's going bye-bye. So, yeah, so you got the mercantile vessels for civilians, police, search, rescue, mercantile. And then you have civilian-owned vessels or recreational vessels, which we would call recreational. These would be your speedboat racers. Speedboats. They would be your yachts. Oops. CHT, not CCH. Yacht. There'll be your yachts. Let's redo that whole thing. And the houseboats. Although houseboats are more river type thing and lake type thing, and not ocean going or shoreline vessels. Your fishing, your bass boats, and then you got your sailboats. The bass boats would be your fishing boats. You can be oceanic fishing, commercial fishing, use nets, civilian recreational fishing boats, your cast line and sinker, fishing rods. So which is classified as bass boat compared to fishing boats, commercial fishing boats. Oops. I did that. Recreational is mixed. So the speedboats. Now, the first time I realized that as one word, they can be used as one word or two words. Yachts, GHTs, houseboats, so I'm going to use the term bass boats instead of fishing boats here to distinguish between the commercial fishing boats versus the civilian recreational fishing boats. Now there is oceanic bass out there versus river bass and lake bass, and then you have your sailboats. Now you have, these would be racing sailboats, and then you also your regular recreational sailboats. Although sometimes, well, actually, the racing sailboats would be more specialized in design for speed and stuff. So they'd be different from the recreational sailboats, unless you have a you got a class of sailboat racing that does non-specialized sailboat designs, like stock car racing, which is supposed to be basically your regular civilian cars, cars that are modified for racing, basically stripped of the radio and stuff, AC, and So let's see here. So those are your civilian stuff. So for the game system, we're primarily going to focus on the police and search and rescue. The recreational, the mercantile ships, we're not going to mess with, and the regular designs we're not going to mess with. And civilian vessels outside of the police are unarmed. Now police vessels would have weaponry, and so now within the Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought system, game system, you cannot design transports. You can have transports in your fleet, but they are NPCs. They're non-player characters. The tabletop, that's what I use because I'm a tabletop RPGer. Video game industry has a different terminology for them, but you cannot design the transport systems. You cannot control the transports. They do what they do. They are AI controlled, and there's nothing you can do other than say, yes, I want one or more transports in my fleet. I want one or more transports in my enemy fleet. Within the, so you're dealing with, within the Ultimate Dreadnoughts, if you want, which is what I want to do, is have a police boat. First of all, your your torpedo boats would have to have at least one torpedo and one gun. All naval vessels within UAD designs, created vessels, have to have at least one naval artillery gun. And that could be your 1-inch gun. Well, they do 2-inch guns. The smallest you can have is a 2-inch gun, but you can downscale that to a 1.1-inch gun, which is what I do for my civilian vessels. That's for my police vessels and stuff. And then for search and rescue, my hospital ships and so they would have to have one torpedo and one naval artillery gun, because the smallest vessel you could have is a torpedo boat. And the only thing that's smaller than you have your frigates and your destroyer. Your destroyers, actually, well, it has to have a torpedo boat on it also. So you got your torpedoes. You first start out, if you start out in an 1880 campaign, you have a torpedo boat, but you don't have destroyers. You have to research the tech tree to get a destroyer. Now, if you start in an 1890 campaign, you have destroyers available to you. And then your frigates don't have a torpedo on there. Then you got your cruisers. You can have, torpedoes are optional, but with the torpedo boat and with the destroyer, your torpedo, it has to be armed with a torpedo and a naval gun. And so, and the smallest vessel you can get is called a torpedo boat. And so they're like 250 ton vessels. They start around 250 ton range, and they go up from there as you develop your tech tree. So for my coastal defense vessels, there are torpedo boats with torpedoes and guns. With this game system, I can knock out, say, I just want torpedoes on there, or I can say either and or torpedo system and or gun system. So I can have a torpedo only boat, I can have a gun only boat, or I can have a boat with both torpedoes and a gun. And let's see here, Navy Field. You start out with a frigate as a neutral nation. You could arm it with torpedoes. You could put torpedoes on there. The hulls have hard points. You have gun hard points, torpedo hard points. Some hard points could be for torpedoes and guns. So you can say, okay, this is a pure gunship, or this is a torpedo and gunship. You can say this is torpedo only by not mounting guns on the hard points. You can do that a little bit. You're sacrificing yourself when you do that, though, the performance of the ships. Navy, World of Warships. I don't have that much experience with World of Warships. I do not like World of Warships. For me, World of Warships is to NFL Blitz as Navy Field is to Madden NFL. And I love Madden NFL. And I had Madden NFL 2002, 2005 on GameCube. So, Navy Field is... Navy Field killed itself after version 1. Because everybody was wanting Navy Field to be like World of Warships. And blah. Which is why I am interested. I like Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts because of those graphics of the warship designs. But Rule of the Waves has better warship design mechanics than what Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought has. I never played Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. I've never played Rule of the Waves. I've just seen them on YouTube videos. And I've seen maybe half a dozen Rule of the Wave videos. And I watched Stealth 17 gaming videos from the time about 6 to 9 months after he put his first video till he stopped doing UAD views when the DCLs came out. When the player versus player DCL came out. So that was like 5 years, 4 or 5 years of watching his videos. So that's it for the civilian mission rules. And what does the time look like? Okay, I think I'm just going to go end it here. And then I'll do the military mission rules in the next video.